A tall, white-haired young man with horns, dressed in a black cloak, sits on a huge throne decorated with red roses and the skulls of bizarre animals. His name is Liszt. He is the boss villain in the company Miracle, and the game character Dark Lord. He takes the place of a prestigious official. A girl with blue hair and cat ears says that her lord is finally here. The blonde elf asks the owner to pamper her. A blue-haired girl in a nurse's costume licks a knife and offers to play. The leaf is more than 10,000 years old. He hovers in the dark digital space above the green-horned monsters. But he has always had only one wish. He just wants the player to kill him and he will return to the real world. Surrounded by a cloud of light, the player tries to stab the lord with a sword. When Ferenc's mother got sick, he was a programmer at Miracle. A blonde-haired young man opens the door of a room in which a gray-haired woman is lying on the floor. He calls out to her in desperation. To raise money for the necessary and very expensive medicines, Liszt had to become a test rat of the Miracle Company and become the most important and powerful villain. A rather grinning Ferenc surrounded by monsters. Initially, the agreement was such that if one of the players killed Liszt within 3 years, his task would be fully completed and he would then be able to return to the real world, to Zhuzong. A frightened leaf hangs in the air between many hours, but who knew that he would become so strong? Ferenc stands on 2 bodies and looks at his hand, saying that to this day no one has been able to kill him. No one can defeat the world boss, the Dark Lord Ferenc. He was trying to go to the strongest player to die. In front of him is a green-clad blonde man with a 97th level bow, a guy with a 99th level fire sword, and a pink-haired woman in a 98th level hat. All of them are deprived of their possessions, including clothes, and embarrassedly cover themselves with their hands. But no one could beat him. The leaf screams that they are all garbage, since they could not even do damage to it. One day he received a scroll. Ferenc reads a piece of paper and exclaims joyfully that he can change his skin to a player's skin and enter the game. The game has a talented player with 524th level. Leaf screams in amazement. He decides to change his personality and, hugging a blue-haired winged girl, says that now he needs a new skin and his goal has changed and asks for help to decide on it. She confusedly agrees. Surrounded by a whirlwind of blue energy, Ferenc raises his wand and launches a 9th level magic called the Call of Anthropos. For the sake of his death at the hands of a talented teenager, he began pretending to be a player. The Dark Lord's silver castle is decorated with stained glass mandalas and surrounded by crows and gargoyle statues. 3 players walk along the red carpet on which the dead player is lying. The yellow-eyed blonde man in a green doublet holds a bow and asks if it is true that the Dark Lord's refuge is here. A muscular guy with lilac eyes shouts that the evil lord should prepare for death. A buxom pink-haired woman with a book and a ball of energy says they came here to destroy him. Ferenc sits on a huge throne decorated with red roses and the skulls of bizarre animals and says with disdain that they utter too many words and are the most talkative adventurers he has only met in his long life. He says that if they really want to fight, then let them do it right now, since he still needs to have time to get back to his business. Leaf sneers and says that, no matter what, he will kindly warn them that it will be a pity to destroy high-quality weapons. A muscular guy takes out a fiery sword from its scabbard. A blonde man inserts an arrow into a bow and takes aim. A woman tightens her grip on a book on which sparks are coming. Above their heads, their levels are displayed. The blonde, 97th, the muscular guy, 99th, the pink-haired woman, 98th. Ferenc says that, moreover, they are quite strong players with indicators of almost 100 levels. They should take care of themselves. Adventurers are shouting that it's time to stop empty talk and start fighting. Jets of water appear around the woman. She shouts out the names of techniques, such as Sacred Prayer, Source of Healing, Magic Aura, Guardian Shield, Ice Attack, Avalanche Mountain. The guy with lilac eyes rushes into the attack with a loud shout. Leaf yawns lazily, glancing at the attackers with one eye. A large black window appears, in which it is written about a warning about a passive attack called the Roar of the Dark Lord. If you receive 200% damage, the damage is returned to the enemy, and the effect of the Sacred Prayer is halved. Hapless adventurers are swept away at one moment by a huge explosive wave of energy. A muscular guy falls to the floor. His sword, armor, a bottle of green potion, and a lot of gold coins fly in different directions. Ferenc gets up from his throne and puts his hands in his trousers pockets, looking down at the adventurers. He says that they are really good warriors, since they caused him a passive attack during such a time. Hapless adventurers who have lost all their possessions, including clothes, are embarrassingly trying to cover themselves with their hands. Leaf mockingly says that they are just a bunch of garbage and shows an indecent gesture, grinning contentedly. Adventurers very quickly run away from the castle, shouting that the Dark Lord Ferenc is so intimidating and that they have lost absolutely everything. The white-haired one orders his guards, white figures with spears, not to let anyone with a level below 200th in hear and complains about such noisy visitors. The guards obey. Liszt grumbles with displeasure that they only distracted him from much more important things and that what he was preparing so hard for is now just one step away from him and that no one is allowed to interfere in it. Ferenc tells the guard to hang up the inviolability sign and no longer accept anyone's calls, so that no one dares to disturb him. The guard bows and obeys. The Leaf runs very quickly past the round lake into the gazebo. Running up the stairs, he asks his beautiful moon if she has finished since he came. A buxom blonde elf in expensive clothes, blushing, asks her master if he wants to have fun. Next to her is a plate of fruit and 2 glasses. Ferenc tells her not to talk nonsense, because he was looking for her to do very important things together and takes the girl by the hands. Luna confusedly says that her master is so persistent and, although she is already ready, could he not be in such a hurry? Leaf climbs under the table and asks how he can take his time. He takes out a saucepan and puts it on the surface of the table, saying that this is what he has been preparing for many years. Ferenc removes the lid and looks reverently at the instant noodle briquette inside. The elf holds a hot kettle in her hands and says that the Dark Lord is always right and she has already prepared boiling water. But she really does not understand a little what is so special about this instant noodles. The white-haired man says that the girl is stupid and she would know what kind of work he did to get her. Ferenc steps on a dead monster. He tore off the old monster's head in order to get the ingredients from its tentacles in order to bake bread. A leaf waves a net over the river. The whole point of delicious instant noodles is in bags of spices and sauce, so he went to the nightmarish forest personally, and squatted for 30 whole days in order to get everything he needed. Ferenc stands next to a large chest full of treasures and gives a fully stuffed bag to one of the skeletons, dressed in raincoats. Ramen is a fragrant and delicious soup cooked on bones. Leaf made an agreement with the skeleton tribe in exchange for this and it was really difficult. But this is not enough, and in order to do everything according to the recipe, the young man went to bargain for ham from the pig people of Lake Kennar, and also begged the heron to give him eggs. 2 pigs and a heron look very incredulous. Ferenc reverently pours spices into a pot with a briquette of instant noodles and says that only after all these difficulties could he collect a full bowl of noodles with an absolutely original taste. He holds a teapot in his hands and tells Luna to hurry up, because he already feels the taste of his hometown and this is the greatest happiness. However, the bowl turns out to be completely empty. Ferenc screams in surprise and calls for his noodles. The moon screams that someone has come and stolen it. The young man orders her not to shout, as it is useless and he knows who stole his noodles, because in this world no one dares to rob the Dark Lord, so there is only one suspect. It must be because of the dam system. Initially, Ferenc was the most ordinary programmer of the game development department. In the 2050th year, when he was still real, his company developed a virtual reality game with full immersion called Miracle. The most important feature of this game is setting up bosses in the system. In the 2050th year, artificial intelligence is extremely developed, but this is still not entirely true. To create a boss in the game, his team developed a smart boss program. This was necessary in order to make the bosses in the game truly unique, and soon the development team began to actively implement this new strategy. The program required 4 real people to enter the game and become bosses. The system would track and analyze physical and psychological activity to create a comprehensive model. Keeping all the confidentiality of the project, it was impossible to stop the program before 3 years, as well as disclose information about it to the outside world. This is very risky, so the company could not find volunteers, having gone through a whole 1,000,000 employees. And just at that moment, Ferenc's mother became seriously ill. To raise money for her very expensive treatment, he had only one way out: to register for this program. Thus, the sheet ended up inside the game Miracle. He is not a player or a game character. He is a real person and the boss of this world, the Dark Lord. But Ferenc did not expect that he was sending himself into an endless pit of hell, because he can only return to the real world after the boss in the game is killed. But to this day no one can defeat him, the Dark Lord. It's been 3 years, he wants someone to finally kill him. About a year ago, an event occurred that led Ferenc to real despair. Guangming City finally had a player who was ranked first in the rankings at that time and achieved the title of the Holy Sword of the Dawn. A blond man in shining armor with a huge sword in his hand looks at Liszt. He came to him with the ability to contain the darkness, holding an artifact that deals 500% damage to evil creatures with the Sword of Light. The man rushes to the attack, simultaneously snatching his sword from its scabbard. Then Ferenc thought that he would kill him and he would finally be able to return home. The sword touches the young man's forehead without causing the slightest harm. Windows with warnings about the passive attack of the Dark Lord are displayed. The sacred damage received is reduced by 0.8% when receiving excessive damage. All damage is transferred to mana, with which the white-haired man can heal himself when receiving damage of 200%. He returns to the enemy, and the effect of the sacred prayer is halved. The swordsman was killed by his own sword, but he survived. A man is kneeling in front of Ferenc, pierced by a sword of light. Tears flow down the young man's face, and he curses and shouts that he was such a weakling that he could not kill him. Leaf falls on his knees to the moon, who gently strokes his head and tries to calm him down. He says that it is not necessary to convince him that there are many other treasures and seafood that can be eaten instead of noodles, because he just wanted to eat ramen. It would be enough to remember real life. He misses home so much, and is it forbidden? Luna tries to calm the owner down again, but Ferenc says that she is just a game character and will not be able to understand him. This system dares to treat him like this. He will not allow it. Liszt says that tonight he will sleep with the moon and orders her not to forget to dress like an angel in all light. The girl says she understood everything. Ferenc presses the button to switch to combat mode. His appearance changes, his body is on fire, and he shouts that since they won't let him go home and stole his noodles, today he is going to kill 1 million players to show his anger. Adventurers and townspeople are running in panic, pushing and shouting that a big event has happened. The Dark Lord has unleashed a war. His cavalry is breaking through. His anger will turn everything into ashes here. The blue-haired guy asks why the Dark Lord appeared so suddenly, because he had been out of the game for a long time. The guy with the red hair shouts that he is leaving because something terrible is planned, and what else can be done when such a strong boss will soon appear here. The blonde girl in the hat says fearfully that she is from Benbu, and that swordsman number 1 was killed by his own sword with just one blow. And is anyone able to defeat the Dark Lord at all? The blue-haired elf shouts that she will stop talking nonsense and should hurry to the warehouse, leave money, weapons, experience, everything that only they can save. A tall, fair-haired young man in expensive armor, with transparent wings and a long sword with ornaments appears on the wall. A blue character window is displayed, in which it is written that the name of this player is Lao Nai. He is a master adventurer, and does not like Shitai. Lao Nai mockingly asks what they are so afraid of and whether they have seen the recording of that day. Even if that swordsman was killed, did no one else notice anything in the video? The pink-haired girl asks what else was in this video. Lao Nai shows everyone a fragment of that video, and tells them to take a closer look at the fact that in the midst of such a fierce battle, the players on the walls of the city did not get a single injury, because the city is a safe place, and as soon as the players enter the city, they automatically fall into a safe zone in which the Dark Lord will never hurt anyone harm. The crowd starts shouting that, indeed, there is a safe zone and they have nothing to fear, that this boss, no matter how powerful and strong he may be, will still not be able to break into the safe zone, and that then they do not need to run anywhere, but should just stay in the city and see that this helpless Dark Lord can do it. Lao Nai shakes his finger and says that it is not good to just stand, since the dark army of this boss consists entirely of elite monsters from the 80th level. And gold coins, equipment, experience, all this has a very high cost. Don't they need coins, equipment, and experience? He shouts that if they want it all, let them follow him to the city wall. They will stand in safe territory and will be invincible. If the Dark Lord still dares to come, they will use his cavalry to get it all. The crowd is shouting that they support this kind of plan, that they will follow Lao Nai and let him lead them, and they will cheat this boss. In the night sky, Ferenc flies on the back of a huge black dragon and reads a scroll, saying that the nearest city to him is Bushi, and that there are a lot of scientists, novices, and students in it. In general, garbage. His army is marching on the ground. Although Leaf has long realized that none of the players at the moment can kill him, but the main problem is that the overall progress of this game world is very far from the level to fight the world boss. But with such a huge player base, very few have reached the Grandmaster level, let alone the highest level called August, who can fight the world boss. The players are moving very slowly. Before that, Ferenc did not know all this and ran to his death in vain. He killed countless adventurers and destroyed their equipment. And in order to avoid this in the last battle, he did nothing at all. Tears come to his eyes and he says that as a result, this group of players not only didn't raise their level, but the system stole noodles from him because they don't like him. Leaf sadly exclaims what kind of people they are and why they harm his noodles, what bad she did to treat her like that. Moreover, do they really think that this is the most ordinary bowl of instant noodles? No, this is his bowl of homesickness. One of the warriors reports to him that they are almost at the borders of Bushi City. Ferenc grins contentedly and says that it's nice and wonderful, and that since he can't do anything else here, they can prepare for their death. Suddenly he bends down and looks at the city. The main square is crowded with players who make faces, show him obscene gestures, and shout that it's enough to suffer nonsense, and there is no point in such a big war. That if he can, then let him come and kill, although he can't, that it's time to clean this boss and call him names in every possible way. Leaf is furious and shouts that it's just wonderful, and that the fact that he can see them in the palm of his hand makes him feel better and better. The white-haired man wishes everyone death, snaps his fingers, and a huge purple blast wave hits the city in an instant. Immediately, a window is displayed with a warning about the alarm and that the Dark Lord has used a forbidden curse called Impending Darkness and that the cities affected by this magic will be temporarily released from protection and will no longer be a safe zone for all players during the fighting. The players scream in horror and start running away. Someone asks if Ferenc is the master of this world or is it just a bug of the game. A huge army of the Dark Lord rushes to attack helpless players, burning and destroying everything in its path. A huge monster with a pumpkin head and glowing red eyes looms over Lao Nai. The head of the monster is reflected in the pupils of the young man and he shouts in despair and passion that he wants to fight him. The pumpkin-headed monster opens its huge mouth and sucks in all of Lao Nai's clothes and equipment. He thinks about how embarrassing it is. In front of Ferenc hangs a window with a counter of killed players, whose number has already reached 10,000 and orders to turn on the counter from 1,000,000. He is a Dark Lord and will keep his word. The white-haired one adds to tell his warriors not to climb to players with a level from the 100th. The boy with the 101st level looks in amazement at the black whirlwind that sweeps past him. Ferenc still hopes that they will be able to reach an even higher level and finally send him home. He orders to continue because he himself will not climb into the city because he is afraid to cause a passive attack again. A blonde girl in a white dress with 178th level and a guy in ragged clothes with 162nd level are sitting on the ground and looking at the equipment lying in front of them. The Liszt orders to leave a little time before each wave for talented players who were able to survive, so that they have time to pick up equipment. He looks at the counter, which has stopped at 30,000 players, and asks why it is not moving. The white-cloaked warrior replies that it's because all the players in Bushi City have already been killed. Ferenc makes an ugly face and orders to go to the next city and continue. There are 86 major cities on the continent of adventurers, about 1,000 smaller towns, and an absolutely countless number of villages and tribes. In the end, this war unleashed by the Dark Lord spread to a total of 32 major cities, 31 of which were completely destroyed. 1,000,000 players were dealt a crushing blow. After that, the Leaf returns to its castle. His subordinates joyfully proclaim the glory of their powerful master and say that they love him very much. His subordinates thank him for his hard work and offer to celebrate his return. Ferenc says he is tired and will rest before that. He opens the door to a small room and changes into pajamas, then falls on a wide bed. Leaf feels only emptiness and thinks that no matter how many cities he conquers and how many lives he collects in this world, all he can get here is emptiness. The door opens a crack and Ferenc sits up on the bed. The moon enters in light clothes and congratulates its owner on his return. Leaf hugs her tightly and thinks that it's so good that he has her and that only an elf can fill this void. Early in the morning, Ferenc opens his eyes and hugs the sleeping moon, thinking that of all the huge harem, he likes this girl the most, because she is full of enthusiasm, not arrogant, charming, and always knows how to find the right words, as if she was a girl living next door to him in the real world and now calms him down a lonely soul here. That is why he values the moon even more and calls her only when he is in a very good or very bad mood and is afraid to tire her. Ferenc kisses the moon on the forehead and goes out onto the balcony, thinking that it doesn't matter what thoughts come to his mind. Life goes on anyway and a beautiful boring day has come again. Leaf looks at his castle from above. The Dark Lord sits impressively on the throne. 2 girls with horns stand next to him and serve him plates and a glass. 5 beings enter and announce that they have brought news for the Great Lord. A small creature with a drop head and a long scroll in his hands says that they came out as absolute winners in a dark holy war, and as a result, All people tremble in the dark, and the earth is filled with the blood of adventurers. He proclaims glory to the great Dark Lord. Ferenc thinks that this time he was completely merciless, and when his subordinates speak, he immediately imagines the wine in his hands and how the beauty smells around, and he just wants to call a programmer to make even more game characters. He imagines two girls in open clothes and blushes, closing his eyes. The creature with the drop head says that thanks to the blessings of their lord, the troops discovered a very rare but low-level item in one of the cities during the holy battle and asks his king if he listens to Wei Chen's report. Liszt breaks away from his pleasant thoughts and says that he is listening. Wei Chen screams in horror that his king is not listening to him at all and begins to sob. He runs away and shouts not to be stopped and allowed to die for his lord to prove his loyalty. Another hooded creature says they're not trying. The pink-haired girl with horns says that Minister Slime just said that he wants to hand him that blue scroll right in front of him. Ferenc looks at the blue scroll and says that it is a naughty scroll of the god of evil and he has never seen such a thing. The leaf unfolds a scroll, which says that it is a scroll that the god of mischief Siege accidentally dropped. They say that he can disguise any person as a living ordinary person, but who will use it? The effect of this scroll is that if you give this item to a game character, then he can pretend to be adventurers. Ferenc reads the last sentence out loud in shock and fiddles with the scroll. He shouts that this is definitely the development of Sun Mingliang and remembers a blue-haired young man with glasses and a kind look. Song Mingliang is Liszt's roommate in the university dorm and his best friend. They completed their master's degree together and joined the Miracle Development team as designers at the same time. When Ferenc's mother fell ill, Song Mingliang lent him all his savings and did not say a single word. They are not siblings, but they are very close. Leaf thinks that this scroll was obviously made for him by Song Mingliang, but does not understand why he could have done it. Maybe something happened in the real world, some problems with the game, or his mother's health deteriorated. But even if he uses this scroll and pretends to be a player, he still won't be able to leave the game world, and then what's the point at all? Wei Chen cautiously and fearfully says that if the master does not like this scroll, it's okay and he has many others. Ferenc asks what other scrolls there are. A creature with a droplet head shows him a screen with a young man in a blue jumpsuit, a shield and a sword. Leaf exclaims incredulously that this is a player with 524th level and it looks like he knows how to use that scroll of Song Mingliang that he just received. Ferenc happily squeezes Wei Chen's chubby cheeks and calls him his baby and his best minister. The other four creatures watch as Leaf drags the minister, who says he is crazy about the Dark Lord, and say that they also want their king to touch them. Ferenc says that he is closing the meeting for today and dismissing Wei Chen, instantly disappearing. Leaf runs across a bridge over a small river to a house with a ladder and chants that now he has a dream and an idea, and that he will pretend to be adventurers, become a mentor to that talented newcomer, and when he becomes the first among all, he will be able to send him home with just one click. How smart he is and what it is, it's a great plan. But he still needs to prepare first. Ferenc opens the door of the house and tells Yulan to urgently change her appearance. A buxom blue-haired girl with cat ears and a tail asks the gentleman who she should change into now and tries to guess. Yulan changes into a black suit. A whip appears in her hands and she asks if it's like this. Immediately, she transforms into a nurse and licks the knife, asking if it is suitable. The next time, Yulan becomes a very little girl in a pink kipao. Ferenc says that he is asking to change his own appearance. Yulan turns his clothes into a pink kipao and he shouts that this is not the same either. Leaf blushes and asks the girl to turn him into a very ordinary player. Yulan in a maid costume and Ferenc in knight armor and with a big sword. A blue-haired woman in a nun's cassock and a Leaf in a novice's clothes. Yulan in an open black jumpsuit and white-haired in a three-piece suit and with a glass in his hand. The Dark Lord shouts that it's all completely different, too cool and exaggerated, and isn't there a simpler and more restrained transformation here? Yulan asks him not to boil over and wait for her to pick up something else. Ferenc notices a gray hoodie in the corner of the girl's house and takes it, saying that he wants exactly these clothes. Leaf puts on a hoodie and says that he has already decided everything and will dress like this. Yulan says that when her master is pleased, he seems even more cute than ever. She thinks it's a real nightmare and the Dark Lord looks terrible, but she can't tell him that. Ferenc asks what he should call himself now. Yulan says that the name of the gentleman is Franz Liszt, noble and elegant, unless something else is needed and this name is bad. Leaf says that now he has a different goal and a different personality, so he needs a different name and asks the girl to help him with this. Yulan says that his real name is Franz Liszt, also the Great Dark Lord, and if you mix these names, you get the name Lester. Ferenc pronounces this name The blue-haired woman falls to her knees and asks the Lord to forgive her, since Yu Lan is bad and deserves to die and not be angry with her. Leaf takes her by the chin and says that he is not angry at all and she has come up with a very good name, so he will take it. The white-haired one enters the data into the scroll. The player's name is Lester. His race will be a magician. To make it more convenient, his rating will be 38 out of 100. The level of that player is a student, a little lower. His level shouldn't be too high. The 67th is quite enough. Leaf chooses a long rod as a weapon and says that it will be good. Surrounded by a whirlwind of blue energy, he raises his wand and launches 9th level magic called the Call of Anthropos, 10th level magic called Phase Transition, 8th level magic called Tristilo's Joke. The list orders to find a player with the 524th level and immediately hand it over to him in the most inconspicuous way, and not let him find out about everything. Now he is on the way to his long-awaited death, and now he is closer to his dream. A blue-haired guy, a black-haired guy, and a pink-haired girl are running very fast on the rocky step. The guys are shouting that they need to run faster. The pink-haired girl says that it's all because Iluo wanted to go and collect this grass, and in the end they were chased by both monsters and mercenaries. Iluo says that he only wanted to pick some flowers in order to weave a wreath out of them, and that the map shows that they will be able to escape from them if they cross over to the other side, and asks them to believe him. An explosion is heard next to them, and the adventurers fall to the ground, thrown back by the blast wave. A blonde-haired young man in a hooded cloak, a red-haired man in armor, and a red-haired buxom woman in a black and red bodysuit, gloves and with a sword on her hip appear. She says there's nothing she can't get, and she lets them delete their game ID and start over, and that it's time for them to leave this world. Red vines burst out of the woman's hand and entwine the body of a pink-haired girl who screams plaintively. Iluo draws his sword and cuts the vines with one blow, then catches the falling girl, calling her a flower. They reach the cliff and the blue-haired man says that there is no road here. The pink-haired woman plaintively asks Brother Fen Ting what they should do now, and that the skin she has just received will soon become useless, and she is very annoyed. Iluo says she doesn't need to be afraid and he will protect her. The red-haired woman says they still flirt even when they are on the verge of death. A huge purple pentagram appears in the sky and she screams that she will be merciful and send the lovebirds to die together. Her army is cheering. A huge pillar of energy hits the ground and throws all the people of the red-haired one in different directions. Adventurers can barely stand on their feet. The red-haired woman asks what just happened. Smoke is coming from a huge pit, and all the warriors are lying on the ground. Lester says it's just a small hole and no one should notice it. He looks around and, seeing the warriors scattered around the pit, shouts that he has just come. And a bunch of people have already fallen at his feet, and do they want to touch the porcelain? The white-haired man continues to look around and does not understand why so many people are looking at him. That among them is his player with the 524th level. Did he really kill a lot of people with his landing? Ferenc adjusts his hood and thinks that he will get out first, and only then he will improvise. He starts to climb out of the pit, but the leg of the red-haired woman rests against his shoulder. She shouts at him to stop, then turns around and shouts to the adventurers if this is their reinforcement. Another student and a bunch of fools, and if they don't want to make her laugh to death by sending a klutz assistant. Lester winces and turns away. The woman says that since they are so self-confident, then welcome. Using this thorn sword, she will send them to heaven. The red-haired one impales herself with a sword. Leaf asks what kind of sword it is, since he didn't hear it. Is it really that cool? The red-haired woman says that her sword miracle is the 86th most powerful weapon in the world. He increases the bleeding and the opponent loses 1% of his health per second. Only 100 seconds protects him, and isn't he scared now? Ferenc admires the sword. Iluo asks from afar why she is so annoying. They just killed a scarlet spider and escaped with good equipment. And they want to rob them. Otherwise, why did they need to chase them for so long? And is it really possible to shamelessly intimidate people now? The red-haired one says that the 3 students couldn't kill the scarlet spider, and that someone must have already wounded it before them. Since they have collected all the equipment, then, of course, it is theirs, and they, too, are only doing the will of God. Iluo calls her shameless. She says that he is very laconic, and if they leave their weapons and get away right now, then maybe she will take pity on them. The black-haired man screams not even to dream. Ferenc chuckles and says that really this is not a daily robbery. He turns to the 3 adventurers and says that today he will take care of these young people, and if they don't like it, they can leave with him together. The red-haired woman in a rage shouts that it can only be done over her corpse. She rushes to the attack with her warriors. The adventurers look in horror at Lester, who is already ready to use a passive attack, but stops in time. A mercenary rushes at him shouting, and Ferenc thinks that if he uses his dark power, the secret will be revealed and what techniques ordinary players usually use. The mercenary shouts that he is afraid and let him meekly accept his death. Leaf raises his wand and uses a 4th level magic called Fireball technique. A lot of flames soar into the air. The mercenaries laugh with tears in their eyes and shout that he really is garbage. Mom forgot to close the door and the homeless man entered the game. Are fireballs of this size called magic, and apparently all newcomers this year's level is not very good. Lights descend on them and huge explosions are heard. The red-haired woman looks at her warriors and shouts that this simply cannot be and that one student used the fireball technique and killed more than 20 scientist-level players in a matter of seconds with one blow, and that this is definitely some kind of bug in the game. Ferenc is next to her in an instant and says that she should not be afraid and that he will not kill such a cutie, but only asks to be allowed to touch her. The woman shouts that she should touch herself and try to hit him, but a passive attack called Roar of the Dark Lord is activated, and when the attacker receives damage, 200% of the damage received is returned to the attacker, and this skill has a reduced effect with a divine attack. The woman is carried away by a whirlwind. Lester says he's not a pervert at all, he just wanted to touch her sword. The red-haired woman falls to her knees and says that she was mistaken and asks for forgiveness. Leaf asks to put the sword on the ground and he will return it a little later. She puts her sword on the ground and says that the white-haired man can take it right now and thinks that men cannot be trusted and everything they say is a lie. Ferenc touches the sword and blue windows light up, in which it is written that a passive skill called Determination of the Dark Lord has been activated, which reduces real damage by 80%. A passive skill called Calmness of the Dark Lord has been activated. When receiving real damage, the life return coefficient increases to 500%. Ferenc is covered by green numbers of added stats. He says that since this is all, then this sword is useless and that now that he has touched her sword, he will leave her this ring and she needs to hurry up and leave. Leaf drops a ring with a red stone into the woman's hands. She thanks her older brother for not killing her and hopes in her mind that this ring will not kill her. Looking at the ring better, she realizes that this is an orange outfit with legendary quality, and there are not so many of them on the whole continent. And since this man gave it to her so easily, does this mean that he really is now her older brother and teacher? Ferenc remembers about his teenager with the 524th level and thinks that he is handsome and cute, wishing that he would go with him as soon as possible to raise his level and send him home as soon as possible. If you think about it, then with such a level, he should already be a master, and how did he end up in such a position? The pink-haired girl screams that Iluo is to blame for everything that happened today and he caused her brother Feng so much suffering and how he is going to make amends to them. Iluo asks her not to be angry, as he will take it up right now and reimburse all the losses the next time they enter the game. The pink-haired one says that it will be right and asks brother Feng to go soon and takes his arm. Ilo in the image of a dog is wagging his tail quite. Ferenc thinks they treat him like a dog. He raises his hands to the sky in extreme despair and shouts why the only talented and brave person who can kill him turned out to be just an errand dog. Fen Ting says that if that's all, then he will go first, as he is a little tired. The pink-haired one asks brother Fen to go with her. Iluo asks if they will leave so easily. Fen Ting creates a portal and they exit the game. The girl doesn't even turn around. Ilo says that let the flower rest properly, and he will compensate for all her losses. Ferenc thinks that the young man is wagging his tail again, while he was abandoned by his own team. He could have been angry at least a little bit. Leaf looks at Ilo and thinks that it's even good that everyone has already left and only he and this player with the 524th level are left. The brunette thanks him for saving her. Lester says that he just acted according to justice, the light of righteousness, and thinks that this boy is also naive. He likes him and takes him for himself. Ilo smiles stupidly. Lester says that in this case he now has one more wonderful friend and offers to accompany him to the workshop in order for him to fix his broken weapon. He gives his name and Ilo says that although he is very grateful to Lester for his help, he still has to refuse because he wants to compensate for all his losses on his own, since he does not want to disappoint the flower, let alone cause inconvenience to him. Ferenc is horrified to think that his super game genius turned out to be an ordinary weakling dog, and Daddy will not allow this, otherwise he will collect garbage for these imbeciles. And when he grows up to kill him, he will have dried up and covered with cobwebs for a long time. Lester cheerfully says that he has a task assigned to him by the main one. He must go to the Kaiyang swamp in order to clean up all the monsters there, and he said that if we complete this quest, then we will definitely get good things and offers to divide them in half if he agrees to go with him. Leaf bites his fingers and thinks that he urgently needs to get up from his knees and he will be his father and support. Yilo timidly says that she still can't go with him. Ferenc says that there are no buts and in any case, the brunette cannot refuse. The white-haired man thinks that now he is like a dog. Iluo says that what he really wanted to say was that his bag wasn't roomy enough. The red-haired woman, who never left, takes out her huge bag and says that it's okay, since her bag is very big and asks her brothers to take it with them. She leans over to Yilo, who is bleeding from his nose and says that she is very big. A woman shamelessly flirts with a young man and says that she has more strength than they can even imagine. Lester covers Yilo's eyes with his hand and says that they will pretend that they didn't see anything and they need to go as soon as possible. The red-haired woman is obviously very disappointed. They walk to the Kaiyang swamp through a mountainous area covered with fog and dotted with huge skeletons of monsters. The red-haired woman is whistling something to herself. Ferenc says that they are just a sweet bone for the dog and orders them to follow him, as he is going to open a magic scroll for the dungeon. A red octopus-like monster appears in front of him. The woman happily says that long live the boss. Lester attacks the monster with a 5th level magic called Fireball Attack. The red-haired one screams that it's just amazing. As a result of this attack, the octopus monster crumbles into a lot of gold coins, medicines, weapons, and jewelry. Iluo gleefully picks up the coins and shouts that the Pope is very powerful, and that there are restoring potions, pills for strength, and all his previous losses are now restored in an instant. The red-haired woman puts on a crown and twirls a saber in her hands, shouting that it is very cool, and she has never had anything like it. Leaf thinks that let Yilo take everything. It will be his reward. He will grow up, raise his level, and then destroy him. Yilo in expensive armor and a cloak with a huge sword pierces the joyful Ferenc through, and then he will be able to return home to his mother. Lester gawks, waves his arms, and shouts loudly that just the thought of it instantly makes him happy. Yilo asks if he's okay. The red-haired woman confusedly says that, probably, he is too hardworking a person and he will not understand him. Ferenc thinks that since his goal is to make this kid as strong as possible, why not just give him a trial? Leaf hands the stunned Iluo a scroll and says that if he wants to feel stronger at the speed of light, he can lend him a scroll with fireballs so that he can dominate this Kaiyang swamp. Iluo confusedly asks if it will suit him. Lester shouts that since he said he would come, it means that he will come and that he will not take the redhead with them, and his soul is next to him. The red-haired woman asks with displeasure who else is a redhead and how dare he call her that. In the heart of the Kaiyang swamp, white flowers grow in the middle of a black swamp. Small flames burst out and monsters in the form of flowers and octopuses rush at the adventurers who have come. Iluo instantly destroys them with a scroll with fireballs and says, looking at the huge fireball above his head, that it is very powerful, and he is just like a killer with this scroll. No matter what level the monster has, he dies on the spot. The woman says that this is really cool and thinks that after collecting all these things that fell out of the killed monsters, the ring given to her by Ferenc was filled by only 1%, and that the identity of the older brother is becoming more and more suspicious. She leans over to Yilo and asks if he has seen this guy named Lester before, if they know him personally, and what kind of relationship he has with him. The brunette replies that he did not know him before. He is really very strong, going through difficult roads and always comes to the aid of those who need it, and he is even envious. The red-haired girl thinks that such a picture can easily deceive Yilo, but not her. Lester is clearly not a simple student-level player. He is certainly not below the boss's level, and for some reason unknown to her, the boss is so much interested in this young adventurer named Yilo. However, he claims that he has absolutely a small level and there is another goal. A huge monster in the form of a spider appears in front of them, around which a multicolored glow spreads. Iluo screams in horror that this is a demonic spider, the most powerful boss in the Kaiyang swamp, and that this is all, the system will kill them, since this boss surpasses their level combined and it is simply impossible to kill him. Leaf stands silently and looks. The red-haired woman asks Mr. Lester what they need to do now. He replies that they have nothing to fear and do not underestimate their strength. A demonic spider weaves its purple web. Yilo grabs his head. Ferenc shoots him with his fireballs. A whirlwind of fire engulfs the spider monster, and it turns into a sword with a red crystal. The red-haired girl exclaims very happily that it's perfectly played. There are sparks in her eyes. Lester frowns and says wait to be happy, because that's not all. 3 figures appear in the sky. Iluo doesn't understand where these newcomers came from here. A blonde man in a purple cloak and a wand in his hand shouts that the most important monster of the quest in 16 hours of fierce battle. It was not enough to miss everything because of these fools. Another blonde man with a bow and a quiver of arrows shouts that they have not thought about what it's like for them now. A black-haired young man in a red raincoat shouts that now it will take a week for this boss to be in the game again. They have already missed all the important awards and events and what they will pay them now. They shout that there are 2 scientists and 1 student. You should just arrange a duel and that's it. Iluo shouts that they just can't be that unreasonable, and they don't need to approach. A bad gleam appears in Ferenc's eyes, and he shoots fireballs at the 3 adventurers. They instantly disappear and only their equipment remains. Swords, shoes, and cuirasses. Iluo says that Mr. Lester sent 3 adventurers to the resurrection point so easily. Liszt says that there is nothing to be surprised about. If he works much better, he will be able to do it too. Hearts appear in the eyes of the red-haired girl and she shouts in love that now Mr. Lester is her god and from today she will be his most devoted fan and offers to go together on the Flower Road. Iluo says that Ferenc is so powerful and he really wants to become like him. Leaf thinks that he wants it almost more than a brunette and his results are very important to him. Iluo continues that then he will conquer the heart of the flower and they will play Miracle together. Lester spits viciously and thinks that the young man is already very tired of him with his flower, and he begins to regret that he even knows him. The red-haired and Iluo poke at their blue windows and ask the gentleman to add them as friends. Ferenc says that he only works part-time and he has an agreement with the main one that he has no right to make friends while working. At this time, he thinks that he simply does not have the usual functions of players in the friends system to accept friend requests. The white-haired man tells them to take their weapons, and he definitely needs to go out early and as soon as he returns, he will immediately contact them and instantly disappears. Smoke is coming from the scroll. Iluo sadly says that it has disappeared and he did not even have time to thank Mr. Lester and say goodbye to him. Ferenc plops down on his throne in the Dark Lord's castle and says with relief that it's good that he managed to escape. Otherwise he could have been exposed on the first day. A notification sound is heard and the Dark Lord says that he has received a message from the player, and from whom it may be. A very candid photo of the red-haired woman and a message appears on the screen, in which it is written that the gentleman left so quickly, she didn't even have time to say goodbye to him and that he is really very cool. Ferenc mentally orders Huygen to prepare his harem urgently. A buxom girl in a black bodysuit, black tails and red horns asks the owner not to hesitate to tell her what she does not know. The red Ferenc is in his dreams and thinks that he can do it at least 100 million times and throws himself at the creature standing in front of him. A pink-haired man in a jacket screams in horror that he is straight and cannot. Liszt asks what he just said to him and immediately returns to the throne, saying that he asks for forgiveness. He was busy with some personal matters all last night and asks him to continue. The white-haired man thinks that this redhead is to blame for everything and that he can't do anything when he is excited. Pink-haired says that, as he just said, very strange creatures with new abilities and location have recently appeared on the continent of adventurers. It is still impossible to determine whether they are players or game characters. Ferenc bites his fingernail and says that, apparently, they invented something new and did the update of the game Miracle come out. The man says that he, Wang Yingming, learned from the general chat of adventurers that Miracle is indeed releasing a fresh update tonight, and after this update, a new sacred country map will be opened, which will increase the level of each player, and a new swordsman profession, such as an oriental swordsman, is added. Leaf says that they have finally moved on from the dead point. He thinks that his goal to die has moved one step further. Pink-haired says that, oddly enough, these unusual creatures do not appear in the changelog at all and should he focus on this and solve this problem right now. Ferenc tells him not to worry too much and he suspects that this is generally just a cover, and that Lucas has done a good job and he needs to go on collecting information. Lucas bows and says that's right, and he leaves his majesty. Ferenc thinks that a new profession, a new level, and how in general you can miss such a great and rare opportunity. You can't lose a minute, and it's time to get busy. But for the sake of safety, it will be necessary to improve the intersection magic next time so as not to create huge holes anymore. A huge explosion is heard, and a pillar of flame pierces the sky. Dishes, food and girls fall to the floor. A red-haired girl with cat ears says that for 3 days and 3 nights it has been going on without sleep and rest. That the owner has changed so much that he is ready to train for so long. Does he want to blow up the sky? Luna tries to gather fruit into a plate and says that she doesn't understand anything at all either, but she is happy to see him so focused. After all, the Lord hasn't been so energetic for a very long time. Ferenc stands in a cloud of dust, his fists clenched. Luna says that, according to her impression, he should become the lord of everything and rule the whole world of miracle and eternal darkness. But she does not know why during all this time all she sees is his silence and loneliness, so she often wonders why the king seems so out of this world. The red-haired woman calls out to the moon and hugs her tightly, saying that she thinks she reads too many romance novels, and how about an older sister who will love her while the owner is away from home. Luna moans that Yulan is too persistent. Ferenc enters the room and says to stop this nonsense, go downstairs and change. Luna and Yulan fall to their knees and shout that they shouldn't have upset the master with their antics, and no matter what he did, they ask him not to expel them and spare them. Leaf says that they misunderstood him and, opening his blue window, informs him that he is going to call Lily in order to experiment with his new and improved teleportation skill. He creates a large purple portal, from which a green-haired girl falls out and shouts that thanks to the call of the master, Lily came to serve the Imperial front. She falls on Ferenc and drops him to the floor. The white-haired man cheerfully says that Lily has to work hard to help him with the new teleportation system. Lily says she's at his service. Liszt thinks that the sensations are still as pleasant. He says that she should know that he, as a former Dark Lord, has the ability to create magical teleports. But merging to create higher magic is risky, which is why he needs her, immune to any death, to enter this teleport and help him in this experiment. Ferenc picks up Lily in his arms, who says that she will not let him down and launches him into the purple portal. The Dark Lord uses a forbidden spell called Tristolo Phase Teleportation and says that it looks like the result will be good, and now you will have to wait until Lily teleports back. Unable to stand the long wait, Leaf adjusts himself to his character and teleports to Yilo, thinking that he needs to hurry with him and leave the problem with Lily for later. He calls baby Yilo and he answers from behind the column. The brunette sits on the wall and says that he was fooled by Scarlet, because she said she knew a great person who could sell good weapons at a high price, and he believed it. But she hacked all the equipment that Lester gave him, and even his own saved when he returned from school and came in on the internet. I found this. Yuluo is sitting in only shorts and socks, with a simple sword and shield behind his back. Leaf says that the redhead is good, since she dared to pull something like this even under his supervision, and then let her prepare to endure the anger of her older brother. Elo says that now she has removed him from friends and blacklisted him, he cannot contact her, and what he needs to do now. Lester takes a scroll out of his bosom and tells him to take it and follow him. The white-haired one uses a 9th level magic called the Call of Anthropos and holds a scroll. On the other hand, it is held by an astonished young man. Leaf orders to teleport to the Scarlet player immediately. On Elo's head is a huge red bow and a half-open suit with high-heeled shoes. He thanks Mr. Lester for helping him change his clothes, but does not understand why it looks like this. Ferenc says that he has only such things, and so far the young man will manage with this. He thinks that Yulan is very naughty, since she chose such a strange outfit for him. There is a small market at the entrance to the Dark Forest, where armor and weapons are actively traded and quite a lot of players. The player with his head wrapped looks at Elo very strangely, and Leaf says that it looks like they have arrived at the door of some kind of instance. The brunette says that this is a single-player instance of the Endless Stream, which is open to all levels, but only a player with the Grandmaster level can complete it completely, and that the greatness of the Dark Forest is amazing. The scroll brought them here, and now they will be able to find it. He notices Scarlet in front of them and shouts loudly that she is there. Scarlet turns around and says with displeasure that they came here, but fortunately she was ready. The woman quickly takes off and starts running away. The Leaf touches her hair, but Scarlet touches the portal with her finger, which she managed to reach, and, saying goodbye, disappears. Elo angrily punches the portal and shouts that now they will never catch her, only if she comes out on her own. Otherwise they will never find her again. But she can continue to work with the market system and sell all the equipment without paying them anything, and I believed her, and now it's too late to complain to the support service. Lester gently pats him on the head and asks him not to be angry, and then asks what the name of this place is. Elo says it's a dark forest. Leaf rolls his eyes and thinks that isn't it a garden in his backyard. He says he's going to have a lot of fun. In the Dark Forest, the domain of the Dark Lord, Scarlet sits on huge mushrooms and pokes her finger at her blue window, saying that while this book is not active, no monsters will be able to attack her. If she sells all the equipment and transfers money to her account, then they will not be able to do anything to her. She understands that she did wrong, but she had to do it, and let them forgive her if they can. A red window is displayed in which it is written that it is impossible during the battle, and the confirm transaction button. A woman is surrounded by a crowd of monsters and she shouts that she did not open this book, whereas a boss could appear here at all. A red monster in a tailcoat and with a cane shouts to give it to him. Monsters in the form of wolves run to Scarlet calling for help. Near the portal, Lester is sitting at the table in front of a bowl of noodles and says that of course, ordinary players can easily hold such everyday things in their hands. He eats noodles and says that it's kimchi and how delicious it is. The aroma of stewed beef together with the taste of noodles instantly penetrates into his head, and many thanks to the developers for imitating the flavors. The waiter in a white coat says that he hopes that the gentleman is not going to eat it all and leave, saying only thank you. Iluo mumbles that he thinks it's not the time to eat. Lester thinks he doesn't understand what it's like to feel ordinary. He pours some coins and bracelets on the table and tells the waiter to shut up and bring him another cup. He happily thanks him and runs away. Leaf tells Iluo not to worry, as Scarlet will appear soon. The young man asks why he is so sure of this. Ferenc thinks it's because he's already taken care of everything. A red monster in a tailcoat falls on one knee in front of him and puts his hands in a lock, saying that he never thought he would see his king live and whether he wanted him to take care of that girl named Scarlet and give her the most valuable awards that he has, and whether he understood the master correctly. Ferenc says it's exactly the opposite and he wants the red monster to kill her. He throws Scarlet to the ground and she whispers that this is barbarism. A red monster in a tailcoat raises a huge hammer over her head and shouts that it is for their king. The woman uses teleportation and the release of forces. She falls out of the portal onto the green grass and breathes fitfully. Next to her are Iluo and Lester, who say what a pleasant coincidence it is and what a surprise. Iluo throws Scarlet against the wall and asks where she put all the things. She screams why he hit her in the face. The brunette shouts that he trusted her and she betrayed and robbed him. The red-haired woman says she has to apologize and that's all she can do. Lester says she should be ashamed, because after this, every second person will look at her as a fraudster or a murderer, and whether she understands what he is talking about. Scarlet sadly says that she is not afraid of his threats, since she will not be able to live long anyway. Iluo asks what she is talking about. Tears are streaming down the woman's face and she asks for forgiveness, because she had no other choice. Her father pinned his hopes on his friend, but he went into big debts and because of this the company went bankrupt. All employees quit, and he himself was put in prison and she had no other choice but how to do this, and they can do whatever they want with her. But first give her the opportunity to sell these items and save her family, after which she will work only for them. Ferenc recalls how he himself crawled on his knees in front of a tall blonde man and asked to be allowed to participate in the program and he would do anything. He asks if that's enough. Scarlet looks at him in disbelief. Lester irritably asks if these things are enough to pay off her family's debts and not make him talk 3 times. The red-haired woman says that she will be able to pay most of the debts and the remaining 3 million will not be so difficult to find. Iluo is in shock. The white-haired man asks what she is going to do next. Continue to kill and steal, and she should know that many government services are connected to the system and violating the rules of the game will lead to her imminent death. Therefore, he will give her enough legendary and valuable items so that she can pay off her family's debts. Scarlet looks hopefully at his outstretched hand and says that if so, then he can do whatever his heart desires with it. Lester says that then from that moment on she becomes his personal maid and personal adventurer, and from that day on she must unquestioningly carry out all his orders and call him master. She listens. Liszt says that he will first sign a contract with her in case she suddenly decides to hide again. In his mind, he shouts that it's just fine and every man's dream is a personal maid. Ferenc tells them to remember that under his guidance they will quickly become masters. Above Iluo's head, the inscription "The player is a scientist." A personal disciple of the Dark Lord appears and he shouts thanks to his teacher, who has repaid more than 6 million debts. He is the greatest and most powerful. Lester says they should go train. In a huge glass castle on the red carpet, Lester and Iluo meet Scarlet in a maid costume and 2 blonde young men in suits. The woman joyfully greets my lord and says that the castle is registered in her name and it remains only to finish with the formalities. She asks them to feel at home. Iluo looks around admiringly. Leaf says he is amazed. The young man says that poverty limits his imagination. Ferenc sits impressively in an armchair and says that they will still see each other in the future, and therefore the house will not hurt them at all. Scarlet asks again. Iluo says with tears in her eyes that she is very touched by the teacher's concern. The red-haired one says that she is very touched that even after such an outrageous act of hers, she was able to become part of his family and thanks the master, wiping her tears. Liszt says that then let these losers go and train. Especially he, Iluo, should become at least a sword master in a week, and if he does not do this, he may not return to him. Elo happily shouts that he will do everything. Scarlet jumps up and also says that everything will be done and they are already on their way. Lester stands on the balcony and looks at the castle, saying that it is very beautiful here, and here it is, the happiness of an ordinary adventurer. A female voice is heard from behind, who says that it is really very beautiful. A tall white-haired girl in a golden tiara, in white open clothes and with 6 wings enters the balcony, and says that sometimes you need to visit your exes, but let Liszt not be happy that she decided to visit him after a long time. She is here for a completely different reason, and she is here because he allowed himself to cross the line permitted, in front of the blue mechanism with flasks and liquid. The goddess of light Meng Ling King, one of the 4 bosses who participate together with Ferenc in this game. Comparing her to the other 2 bosses, her possessions and abilities are very similar to his, but diametrically opposed. They completely immerse themselves in the game world and tried a lot of different things. Ferenc and Meng Ling King are sitting on a hill in the mountains among the trees, but she wanted him to stay with her forever while his goal was to return to his mother. Therefore, in the end they peacefully broke up with each other and never saw each other again. Meng Ling King and Leaf collide forces so that other players only fly in different directions. And now she's standing right in front of him. Lester asks that it was a long time ago and whether she came to give him an invitation to a wedding party. Whether she knows that he bought a new house for himself a long time ago, and therefore will not be able to help her with the organization in any way. The goddess of light says that she is not going to reunite with him at all and has come to warn him that his operations with the sale of high-ranking items have upset the balance in the global economy of the game, and it is better for him to moderate his ardor, otherwise he will have big problems. Ferenc spreads his hands and turns his head, asking what sanctions they will impose on him and whether the system will choose his noodles even more carefully. Meng Ling King strictly tells him not to underestimate the system, since his power as a Dark Lord capable of destroying all life and turning the firmament was obtained only thanks to the system. And if he indulges his selfish desires and continues to break the game balance, then players will start to leave the game, and its meaning will begin to be lost. Leaf says that he is also well aware and knows what their goals are and offers to sit down, eat and talk, and pulls out a jar of instant noodles with love in his eyes. 5 empty boxes of instant noodles are lying on the table. Ferenc and Meng Ling King, who has changed into a homemade dress, are enthusiastically eating noodles. The goddess of light says that he should not think that it is so easy to buy it, but this noodle smells so nice. She grins. Leaf asks her to keep her mouth shut when she eats. Meng Ling King tells him to stop whining and give everything he has for this noodles, in which case she will let him go. Lester asks what she's talking about. The goddess of light squeezes his cheeks and shouts that he has had enough of pretending, and she talks about the subject that made a simple adventurer out of the boss. The white-haired man asks what she needs him for. Meng Ling King says that, of course, it's all about clothes. She looks for them every day, but she can't wear any and she just likes to change skins. Ferenc picks up noodles with chopsticks and says that it seems to have overheated in the sun, and does it really have to be such a spender? The white-haired woman tells him to shut up and asks if he will give her the item or not. Leaf says no way, and immediately half of his hoodie is nailed to the sofa by the girl's sword. He nervously says that he knows how to get a second one of the same. Meng Ling King tells him to tell him how to do it, and that, as she knows, this item is only available to bosses, and since there are 4 of them in the game, it can't be that such an item is only singular. Ferenc says that in order to get this item, it is necessary to fulfill certain conditions, as he did by staging a holy war. Meng Ling King asks if he is hinting that she should hurry up and arrange her holy war. Liszt says he means that he will help her with getting this item as soon as possible, but he has one condition, which is that after she finds it, she will join his harem and help him return home. Meng Ling King says it's impossible, but she agrees to wait until they find him. She disappears, and Lester says that she is rude and thinks that the appearance of his ex made him anxious and it's time for him to reconsider his influence on the entire gaming world. A purple pentagram appears on the floor. Scarlet sticks out of it and says she's back. Ferenc asks if they have lit up on any gaming forum. Scarlet replies that Iluo defeated 3 masters by using the fireball technique, and this news has been hanging in the top for several days. He mutters that the situation is not so serious yet. The red-haired woman sits down on her knees in front of the sheet and says that if the gentleman wishes it, he can give her his real address and she will come to him and become his maid in real life. The white-haired man asks what she is talking about. Scarlet happily says that Lester is a wonderful person. She sent all the money received from the sale of his items to pay off the debt, and now her father will prove his innocence in court. His act changed her whole life and she wants to repay him for it. She thought and decided that even in reality she would completely belong to him. Ferenc raises his hands and says that their relationship of master and servant is limited only to the game world. In reality, it is better not to do this. Scarlet sadly says that she is ready for anything for the sake of the owner. Leaf puts his hand on her shoulder and says that then she doesn't have to think about it, and if she practices being a good maid and raising her level, it will be the best reward for him. Scarlet throws her arms around his neck and kisses him, after which, blushing, she quickly runs away and shouts that she is going to practice. Ferenc is sitting on the sofa in complete shock and thinks that he got a kiss from a real player, and that now he is charged at full capacity for returning home and will cuddle with his maid. But if he wants to find the second scroll, he must first solve one problem, namely to find his slug queen Lily. Ferenc activates a 9th level magic called the Call of Anthropos, a 10th level magic called the Prayer of the Three Goddesses of Fate, a forbidden magic called the All-Seeing Abyss, a magical cover for the entire continent of adventurers. The target is the slug queen. He doesn't understand how it can be that Lily's aura could disappear from the game world. The magic he used is not lethal at all, despite Lily's immortal body, and what happened in the end, because it can't be removed so easily and it looks like it will have to be used. Ferenc activates the magic of time travel. A large blue funnel appears, and he thinks that he will return to the moment when the merging of the lions went wrong, track and recycle them. He steps into the intertemporal space, finds the wrong texture, and begins to correct it. At this time, someone puts a hand on his shoulder. Leaf abruptly turns around and asks who it is. The Dark Lord is standing behind him.